So to invite us all into this space, I wanted to share this beautiful image, which is our UBC Point Grey campus, which is the home of our dietetics program. And we're privileged to be on the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territories of the Musqueam. We also have our students engaging in practice education all across British Columbia on the unceded lands of many different groups of Indigenous peoples who all have their own unique identities and histories and traditions. As you've maybe been here before at some of our webinars, you might notice that I've used this slide every single time for our land acknowledgement. It's a beautiful photograph, so that's definitely something I wanted to offer. But I also find that this image really makes me feel connected to the landscape and reminds me that as a settler, that we have a real privilege and a duty to stand with our Indigenous communities who've tirelessly advocated for these beautiful lands and waters and mountains and landscapes. So I feel that this image really does bring me in and calls me to action personally. So I offer that to all of you. So much like when we've gathered before for our program updates, if you've been here before, our intentions are to continue to share updates on many curriculum changes that we're making right now. And we do want to make space to answer your questions. So as I mentioned, we've had really good success with using Slido, which hopefully many of you are familiar with. So the code that you can use if you'd like to submit a question is there on the screen.
I'm just on a webinar thing.
So there's the information there. We're going to put that in the Zoom chat as well, so that you can see it if you've got your eyes there. I also just wanted to share with the group that compared to the webinars that we've done in the past, I have a little bit more content to share today. So it will be a slightly longer presentation. We'll definitely still have time for questions, but it'll probably be a little bit of a shorter question and answer period compared to the other webinars we've done if you've joined or watched the recordings. And as I've shared in past, this is our wonderful team, and most of us are here today in the squares on the Zoom. And of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us. I've got all of our email addresses there. We do a very shared approach to teaching and managing the program, so you're more than welcome to contact any of us. As you've probably figured out by now, I've been spearheading a lot of the undergraduate curriculum changes, so I'm a great point person if anything comes out of today that you wanted to follow up with me on, but my colleagues are equally well poised to connect with you and answer your questions. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot of what we're going to share today, I'm going to talk about the kind of 3 domains of changes that we're making. And of course, there are some things that are specific to certain parts of our program, but there's intersections between all of these different domains. To switch it up, I'm actually going to talk about practice education first today, since I'm sure many of you who are on the call today are involved in that part of the program or probably curious in what's happening there. But we will cover off all 3 of these. And I think I might just invite everyone to check and make sure that they are muted. I think I can hear a little bit of background noise coming through. So I'll just pause there for a second. Okay, I think we've got it. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to briefly tell you a little bit about where we're at with our brand new year 3 placements that are coming up in May 2022. I was feeling like we were needing a little bit of spring imagery here on the slide, so I've gone with a little bit of an April showers brings May flowers vibe. So hopefully that keeps you interested in just listening to me talk for the next 30 minutes or so, that I've tried my best to give you some imagery. So I have spoken about these placements before, so I'm not going to go too much into detail because we are working along the process. Things are actually really falling into place quite nicely for this year 3 placement, where our students will be spending 6 weeks in nutrition care environments, which is meant to be a brand new introductory placement in the program. So we had great success with securing placements. So we have a confirmed list of placements and preceptors. So thank you to those of you who are here today, who put your names forward for that. It's come together really nicely. We've been pulling together various pieces to create this course, and we'll be sharing more things with those of you who are going to be preceptors. And we've been sort of sharing bits and pieces with our students to prepare them before the course actually starts in May. So we have a course syllabus that's 98% finished. We're just refining a few details. We have some assignments that we've created that are formally going to be embedded into this course to help students achieve the competencies and the learning outcomes. And as I've mentioned in past, we're taking a pretty radical shift to evaluation, which will hopefully make it much more simple and streamlined and meaningful for preceptors and students. So we're really excited to keep refining that. And we're also keen to evaluate it and see how it goes this year as well. And with everything we do, we are always keen to collect both formative and summative evaluation. So we have already been reflecting on feedback we've gotten throughout the process, and we'll be more formally evaluating this placement too, because no doubt there will be things that we'll want to shift and change for the next year. So I think that was all I wanted to share on the year 3 placements for now. So I'm going to move on and tell you quite a bit more detail about the year 5 placements, since we've had a lot of really great questions about that. And we're sort of right now emerging into the planning process for our next cohort of students who will begin their year 5 in September 2022. So as you have likely seen through emails that mostly myself has sent out, we do have a survey out right now. We're trying to get a sense of broadly across all areas of practice, like who is out there that's interested in contributing to the program as a preceptor. And in case you didn't see those emails come through your inbox, Tamara is going to post the survey link in the chat today. So sorry, everyone. I think I muted myself there for a second. I'll backtrack a little bit in case you didn't hear what I just said. So I'm just sharing that we're in the process of soliciting interest from anyone out there who is interested in being a preceptor. And this is a pretty huge change from how we have coordinated placements for the program in the past. So we can appreciate there might be some confusion out there about how this is all going to come together. We absolutely are still working quite closely with all of our practice education partners around the province to also identify placements. So our hope is that through the broad call out in our surveys and working with our partners that we can come up with what a good holistic strategy is going to look like for ensuring that we have a good diversity of placements for our students in the new model. So that's happening right now, and Gordon has posted the survey link in case you didn't catch that while I was muted a second ago. And you might be wondering as you're reading this slide, right now we're really focusing on seeking our nutrition care and population health placements because they're going to be occurring first in the next year 5 cohort. The management placements will not be scheduled until May 2023. So we're just going to delay seeking those placements until later this year. So you'll likely hear from us in fall 2022 when we're ready to call out and see who can contribute to the management placements for the next group of students. So the next section of the slides, I wanted to share a little bit more detail at this webinar compared to the past ones where we've come together. We've had some really great frequently asked questions about the year 5 placements that I've put here on this slide. So I'm going to take some time to walk through these 5 questions and give you a little bit more detail of how everything is coming together. And I will just say as well that the next set of slides, I've made them a little bit more text heavy, just so that if you want to look at these slides later, or if you're finding them on our website, that they'll kind of speak for themselves. So I just wanted to give that preface before I get into the next set of slides. There'll be a little bit more reading than the previous few that I've shared. So what are the competencies that we're intending for the students to meet? So as you can see here, these are still in draft, but they're getting pretty close to the final version. And depending on the size of the screen that you're on, you may not be able to read all of these words in great detail, and that's okay. They're mostly here for your reference. But essentially, what we have done is we have taken the new ICDEP National Competency Document, which has 42 practice competencies and 146 specific performance indicators. And I've gone through the process of explicitly mapping those out and condensing them and consolidating them into these 8 learning outcomes that you see here. So we have the behind the scenes blueprint of how all the performance indicators are being met through what our students are doing in placements. But the intention is that this shorter list is what students and preceptors will actually use to evaluate competence in the placements. We're pretty excited about this because this is going to enable us to have a much shorter evaluation form. And really, there was some excellent guidance in the national ICDEP document, which really suggested that the competencies and performance indicators themselves are meant to inform curriculum. So we really took that to heart. And instead of just putting all 146 statements on a page for preceptors and students to evaluate, which is what we do now, we really took the leadership to do the knowledge translation and turn it into this smaller list of statements, which still embodies all the skills that students need to demonstrate. But we're really hopeful that this is going to really result in a more meaningful and streamlined process. So that is quite a change for us, and we're pretty excited about it. We hope that you are too. I will just say, if you're reading these statements specifically, hopefully it's a little obvious that number 1 is more of a nutrition care focused learning outcome, and number 2 is more of a population health focused learning outcome. So 1 and 2 are not going to be always applicable in every placement setting, and that's okay. It depends on the type of practice that the preceptor is doing, whereas 3 through 8 are fairly general, and we feel confident that students can demonstrate those learning outcomes in any placement setting. So the learning outcomes, that's all good and fine, but what does this translate into what the students actually need to do when they're out in placements in the new Year 5 model that's rolling out in fall 2022? So I've put a few key features here for you, and I'm going to talk you through them right now. So we are going to still make some space for what we're calling an orientation week in the beginning of September, and you can see the dates there. That's fairly similar to the dates that we have currently. And in conversation with some of our health authority partners, we recognize that there are some key needs for students to be doing health authority-wide or organization-wide orientation, whether it's attending training sessions or doing online modules. Perhaps there's some in-person things that students need to do. So we've kept that space in place so that there is dedicated time to do that. And we're still working through exactly what that will look like. And it's not going to be the same for every single placement. There are different organizational structures that will impact the types of things that students actually need to do. So we expect that we'll be in conversation with all of our placement partners who are going to host students in Year 5 to just refine exactly how we're going to use that time. So following that week, the students are then going to embark on their 6-week placements. So in those placements, they're going to be on site with preceptors 4 days a week, and they're going to be with us at UBC on Thursdays. And given that we're still planning on utilizing the entire province for placements, most of that Thursday time will likely be on Zoom. That's probably most practical. And in the 6-week placement model, we're still going to be broadly focusing on the same kinds of skills we do right now. But as you can see here, we're sort of broadly chunking that out into a nutrition care placement or a population health placement. So for those of you who are listening in who practice in what you might define as nutrition care, it's going to look a little different than it is right now. We're not going to have these sort of defined nutrition care 1, 2, and 3 type of placements. Every nutrition care placement will have the same expectations and will be just nutrition care, called the same with the same type of focus. For those of you who are listening in who work in what you might define as a population health practice area, they're probably not going to look too different from how they do now if you've been involved. So students are primarily going to be doing projects as long as that makes sense with the type of work that you do. And that's really worked quite well over the years. So we don't really feel the need to tinker with that too much. The key difference, of course, will be that students will be in those population health practice areas for 6 weeks at a time, instead of right now, most of those placements are only 4 weeks. So they'll be a little bit longer. We are also going to take the lead as a team of UBC instructors on designing all the assignments and all the homework And we really are wanting to do a better job of addressing some of the harder to meet competencies that we know are difficult for preceptors to support. So for example, some of the equity competencies in the new ICDEP and advocacy related competencies, those are really hard for preceptors to find experiences on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to make sure that we pick up the slack and embed some intentional ways for students to demonstrate those competencies to us as the UBC instructors. So we hope that will solve some of the more longstanding issues we've had about some of those more difficult to meet competencies. So I wanted to offer this just as not an exhaustive list, but just a few ideas that I can offer of what the students could actually be doing to achieve the learning outcomes that I shared on the previous slide. And again, a lot of these things, if you've been involved with our program before, a lot of you are already doing these types of things with students in the placements. And so that is great to continue these types of activities. And these are the kinds of things that we're going to embed into the teaching materials that we're creating for the placements, so that it's really, really clear like what exactly the student can do while they're actually there day to day in order for them to demonstrate the learning outcomes by the time they're finished. So in terms of the expectations for students, I think we've had a long tradition of philosophically really celebrating self-directed learning for students. And I would say that hasn't changed in terms of how we see the student expectation and how we want to support students to really become self-sufficient practitioners. So students becoming self-directed is going to be a big feature of the new placements as well. So I think we're building upon some strategies that we already have in the program, which is great. So again, we will make it very clear to students, and we're sort of sharing this with all of you, that we do expect students to arrive in their placements and for them to articulate what they need to learn, what assignments they need to accomplish, what the learning outcomes are. So we really want to put that in the students' hands. And again, because we'll be with the students every Thursday during these placements, we'll have really good touch points and opportunities to check in and make sure that's actually happening. I think a limitation of our roles right now is, as you all are aware, like we're not as involved on a week by week basis. So I think we really see an opportunity to be more involved as UBC educators to ensure that students are well supported, that preceptors are well supported, and that the expectations are really clear for everyone. So we are really hopeful that that we can shift that as well in this new way of doing placements. And similarly, in terms of the evaluation processes, right now we've got what we hope will be a simple process in place for midpoint and final evaluations in terms of the formal documentation that the students will need to do and the preceptors can contribute to. So again, we see that as being very student-led. It is student-led right now as well, so that spirit will be carried forward to the new model. So yeah, as you are probably gathering from what I'm sharing about this side, student self-directedness is a big feature of how we're designing the expectations. And again, I think one thing that's been top of mind for a lot of people, which is really understandable, is what's going to happen if things don't go well. And as you can see here, we've got a bit of a midpoint check-in built into these placements, which will be the same for our year 3 placements as well, in case you're curious. And if things are not going well, I think the key piece we wanted to share with the community today is get in touch with us and get in touch with us early. So that message is the same for students, the same with preceptors. So again, because we're going to have our team of 4 educators involved with these placements, we'll have much more capacity to get involved in the process and intervene if things aren't going well. And I think a key feature of these placements being a little bit longer than our current placements, in a 6-week placement, there is more time to hopefully develop successful interventions if things are not always going so smoothly. So our hope is that with more time to actually support students if things aren't going well, we anticipate we're going to need fewer placement extensions, that we're going to have fewer complex performance issues. Certainly, eliminating performance issues is probably not realistic. We know that from talking with other programs, but really having a longer placement, although it might seem daunting at first glance, really should support the student to progress more competently and more confidently so that there's less, I guess, intervention needed compared to some of the placements we have now. So we are, again, going to be certainly collecting data on that, and we are hopeful that we're going to see some really positive outcomes. So in terms of expectations for preceptors, I've listed off some of the key features here. So a part of bringing us all together today is really just to share the philosophy we've used to develop these placements, and certainly when our preceptors are on board with the overall philosophy of the program, I think we all feel more connected to one another, and it makes the experience smoother for everyone. So it really does help if preceptors are able to embody student self-directedness, because I think when we're all sharing that same message, students are really getting that clear expectation from all of us that they need to, find their own resources and ask questions and identify their own learning needs. So that really is a key spirit that we would hope that preceptors can align with us on. In terms of how we're going to support preceptors, we really have moved towards designing these new practice education placements much more like typical university courses. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but we think that it'll be a better way to provide more consistent support. So again, we're taking the lead on, we've designed a syllabus, which all of us have taken a course at some point in our life. So I think we all know what a syllabus is, but it's really intended to clearly outline expectations for students and what's going to happen in these placements. So we're hoping that'll be a really useful tool, and then that can be shared with preceptors as well. We're going to be taking the lead on having formal assignments. So that really takes the responsibility off of sites and preceptors to have to assign homework or readings. So we hope that we can really relieve you of that burden, because that takes a lot of time and energy as well. And in terms of just, again, making sure that all the things that the students are doing in the placement are closely aligned to ICDEF and the learning outcomes, we're going to take the lead on creating assignments and any homework. And our intention is to keep that minimal, because the real value that placements add to the program is actually seeing real life people and being in real life settings. So again, philosophically, our approach is to use assignments when needed, but not to overload students if it doesn't seem necessary. And I've already mentioned this, but it's probably worthy of mentioning again that we really want to hear from you early if you have concerns, because we're going to be your point people as an educator team on intervening if there are any performance concerns. So what we're going to do so that we're really more accessible to everyone around the province is, because we'll have our team of educators, myself, Tamar, Ali, and Gordon, all involved with the placements, we're going to split the class into 4 smaller cohorts. So each of us will have a cohort of about 9 or 10 students, and then that will translate into wherever those 9 or 10 students are placed. So for example, my cohort, I'll be the point of contact for that small group of preceptors. So we've had some really good success with doing that in our current model, and we hope that'll just make us more available to you so that we can respond to what's coming up as quickly as possible and hopefully get things on the right track when needed. So what are things going to actually look like? I've said a lot of nice things and talked a lot about philosophy, but we've heard some questions, which are good ones before, and they might be in your mind right now, like, okay, Kara, like what's the student actually going to do week to week? So this is probably quite small on whatever screen you're looking at, but again, I've mostly included this here as a resource. So we will post the slides, and if you want to have a look on our website or download the slides, you can zoom in and see the details. But essentially, I just wanted to explain the structure that we're creating to really give a bit of a week by week guided experience for both the students and the preceptors. So I've mentioned the course syllabus several times, which is 9 pages long. So I decided not to try and attempt to share that in this presentation. But what I've done here is just captured a little screenshot of what one of the weekly schedule items will look like. So this particular example is for the second week of a year 5 placement. And again, there will be several year 5 placements in year 5. So this would look pretty much the same it would repeat itself as a student goes into a new placement. But essentially what we're trying to provide in terms of guidance and structure is some really concrete focus areas for the student so that when they arrive and they're with preceptors, they know what they're supposed to be doing. And there's prompts for them if they need to ask a preceptor, oh, I need to see, someone so I can practice my assessment skills today. So this is really how we're trying to bring the student directedness to life with some very explicit prompts on what needs to happen week by week. And we've chosen to, right now, if you've been involved with our program before, we have this type of information in the evaluation form, which if you've used the forms before, you're very familiar with what I'm talking about. So we have a series of checklists with this kind of information for the students. And I mean, that's just led to having a very long evaluation form, which we've received really clear, helpful feedback around, that it's not terribly helpful to have to fill out an 18-page form. So by pulling all of the student actions out of the evaluation form, this is how we've chosen to repurpose that kind of information. And hopefully it'll be a smoother, more clear experience for the students too, because course syllabi are something they're intimately familiar with in every single one of their courses. So we're just really trying to mirror a lot of processes and actions that are really already quite familiar to students in their university journey. So we're hoping that that will lead to more success for everyone involved. So a lot of the week by week expectations of what the student should actually do is going to be communicated through the syllabus document. And again, in very small print, you might be able to see some of the types of things that we're going to be doing with them on our Thursdays. So in this particular week, we're going to be having a guest speaker lead a workshop on decolonizing dietetic practice. And again, one of the learning outcomes we're really going to be contributing to as a team of educators is reflective practice and critical thinking. So a lot of the Thursday time will be designed so that students have the opportunity to practice those skills and demonstrate them to us as instructors. And that'll help us also contribute to evaluating student competence when we actually have that time with them every single week to see them demonstrate certain skills. So I hope that paints a little bit of a picture of how that's all going to come together and translate into student expectations. So that moves us through the frequently asked question piece that I had to share with you today. I wanted to move on and just talk to you about clinical instructors, since that's been a piece of our program for a really long time. And it is a really wonderful tradition that we really honor, because it is a formal way that we can recognize the contributions of our dietetics community through the UBC clinical instructor appointments, they're called. But essentially, it's really the clinical instructor title that contributors to our program are eligible to use on the resumes or in their email signatures, etc. So we have really, because we're uncovering all the stones of our program and changing a lot of things, we've taken the opportunity to just revisit process and policy on clinical instructors, because this all links to UBC-wide policy. So I wanted to share some key points here, which you can see on the slide, and simple is the vibe for this slide, which hopefully we will all find refreshing. So we are going to simplify the criteria for who can be a clinical instructor in the new model. So again, hoping to keep it really concrete. So anyone out there who is a preceptor or a co-preceptor for a minimum of one student for one placement will be eligible in the new model to be a clinical instructor. Right now, we have some more complicated criteria, and it translates into some of our preceptors are clinical instructors and some are not, which is a little bit of a funny way of doing it. So we really just wanted to lower the barriers for people being able to access this clinical instructor title, and really offer that as a formal recognition, because precepting is a lot of work, and we really deeply appreciate that and want to recognize that. Another simplification piece that I hope we'll all be excited about is we have a fairly elaborate application process right now, and we're actually just going to do away with all of that. We've talked to our HR department about what's required. So we're going to be going the route of automatically appointing anyone that we know is going to be a preceptor. So that should lower some barriers as well. There's historically been a pretty lengthy CV that needed to be filled out. So we've gotten some feedback that we don't need to do that anymore. There is still information that we'll need to collect from our preceptors so that we can put them in the UBC HR system. But again, it's going to be hopefully much cleaner and low barrier, and we're looking forward to it. So because we're sort of in this period of transition right now, we are going to start with just 1 year renewable terms for clinical instructors. So we'll just be, doing an annual assessment of who is a current preceptor. And we've been assured by our HR department that to renew someone, if you're going to continue being a preceptor year after year, is quite simple. So there is a new HR system that UBC implemented, and apparently this new system has made that simple. So we are all ears when there's an opportunity to simplify. So I hope this is providing useful context for you, because I know many of you on our line today have been perhaps clinical instructors in the past, or maybe you are right now. So I also wanted to assure you, if you are a clinical instructor right now, like in the existing model, that we will just keep your appointment in the UBC system. We're not going to cancel it. If you're no longer involved, we'll just let all the current appointments stay in the system until they naturally expire. So that was a key thing I wanted to share with the group today as well. So I felt like I need for a bit of a recap on some of the practice education information before I move on to talk about the campus courses. So as you've heard me say, we're right in the thick of the process right now of starting to organize these placements for the upcoming year 5 in collaboration with all of our partners. So if you've been listening to me and you're thinking, I think I'd like to be involved, this sounds great, we would encourage you to fill out the survey, which is in the Zoom chat right now. I will send one more email reminder as well. It closes next Friday. And I've given you some examples here of the types of practice areas that would fit really well into the new year 5. As you can see, it's a pretty comprehensive list. Essentially, any practice area can fit. It just, might require some conversation on exactly what things will look like. And of course, there will be more collaboration needed with our partners to sort of see how the survey results will layer into some of the processes that are already going on in terms of identifying placements and preceptors. But again, I just wanted to sort of especially highlight some of our colleagues who haven't traditionally been involved. If you're joining us today and you do private practice or consulting or sports nutrition, we would love to integrate you into the new model. And some of those practice areas actually fit really, really well with management, believe it or not, where you actually could support students to teach them business skills involved with how you run your business and your practice. And we hope that that'll be an interesting way to get around some of the barriers we've had to having private practice dietitians involved in the past, because we do recognize when you have a for-profit model that you can't always have students seeing your clients one-to-one if that's the type of work that you do. So we've had some really energizing conversations with some private practice dietitians about how we can work in more of a project role to support the work that you're doing. So I did want to make mention of that specifically, because that will be a very new thing for us in the program, in case you're listening and that's relevant to you. So that wraps up the fairly lengthy list of practice education updates. So not quite as much to say about the campus courses. This is actually a slide that I shared with our community in September. So I've just put a little red box here on the phase of the process that we're currently in. We've had a lovely interaction with our course instructors over the past several months, and the newly developed year 3 nutrition care and year 3 counseling courses have just started. So students are taking those courses right now. I'll just have to say, from being the lead on collaborating, I think they're looking fantastic, and I'm so excited for the students and for the profession now that we've got these new courses starting. Of course, anything that's new needs some really good evaluation and tweaking. So we'll be embarking on seeing how those courses go, and we'll be evaluating them and refining them for when they run again for the second time in 2023. And just in case you're curious, if you're not as connected to what's going on at UBC, UBC is still primarily doing online learning due to COVID, as I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that. So the plan is to shift most classes back to in-person learning next week. So I'm sure that will be a nice change for a lot of students. I think we can all agree that there are some limitations to online engagement, and we've all been doing it for a long time now. So that's something that's happening around here. And one more thing to say about our campus part of our program, we did have the opportunity for one of our consultants we've been working with on equity, diversity, and inclusion to do a bit of a curriculum review of all of our year 3 and 4 dietetics courses. So some really good feedback came out of that on how we can evolve pieces of our courses to support our journey of decolonization. So that was really meaningful. And I'm going to finish up my piece here, just sharing more overall program. We've been, of course, doing some specific things, but we've been doing some overarching things as well. And if you've joined us before, you might recognize this slide. I shared it in September, but it's so important that it felt worthy of sharing again. We did take quite a bit of time this year as a team to really rethink our vision, mission, and values. So it really did feel like something that we wanted to celebrate and share with you again. Really, in the way that we see it, all the changes that we're making to the program are rooted in our mission, vision, and values. So we hope that that comes through in what I'm sharing with you today and how you see all these changes being implemented over the coming years. So you'll find this on our website. And speaking of, our website has had quite a major refresh. And so special mention to Gordon, who really has been leading a lot of that work. So Tamar has shared the web link. It's the same as it was before. So you can still just click the old link that you may have bookmarked for yourselves, but you'll see fresh content there. So yeah, hopefully you will enjoy that and find what you need. So wanted to probably too briefly touch on what we've been working through at this exact moment on our journey of really trying to transform the program's approach to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I've put a couple high-level things here that I wanted to talk you through. So I made mention of the website, and the screen capture that you can see here is a new dedicated page that we have on the website for our equity and anti-racism work. So we would invite you to have a look there. The consultant that I mentioned that we worked with created a decolonizing dietetics reading list, which we're planning to use in a couple of different ways in the program, but it's also a nice resource just to share with anyone who's interested as well. So we have posted the reading list open access on this section of the website. So we invite you to take a look, and hopefully that will be useful for you in your practice as well. I've mentioned this a few times before as well, but another big piece of work that I've been working on is rewriting all of our policies, which is really important in terms of translating values into intentions and actions. So that's going quite well, and our hope is to have a full set of new policies by this summer that we can re-release on the website. And again, maybe not the most captivating topic, but having solid policies that reflect equity is really important to us to ensure that we're accountable in our practice as educators. And then finally, we do have a very hefty report that we received from one of the equity, diversity, inclusion consultants that we worked with. It's been really helpful for us, but it's currently a very large spreadsheet, which didn't seem overly meaningful to share with our dietetics community. So we're working on turning all the recommendations and actions from the consultant work that we did into a user-friendly report. So we hope that we'll be able to post that on this part of the website soon, so that you can see in more detail what we're committing to and what some of our completed and in progress actions are. So yeah, in summary, have a look at the website. And finally, before we get into the Q&A, I'm just going to invite Tamara Cohen to take the line here and just give you an update on where things are at with the Master of Nutrition Dietetics program.
Thank you so much, Kara, and so great to see you all here today, recognizing lots of familiar names and new names. I just want to acknowledge I'm talking today from UBC, Traditional, Ancestral, and Unceded Territories of the Musqueam people. And as Kara mentioned, our program feels very fortunate and privileged to be able to offer practice education throughout the lands of the Indigenous peoples of British Columbia. So after a lot of hard work and sweat, I am very excited to finally announce the launch of our Masters of Nutrition and Dietetics program. In short, we call it the MMD, the first graduate training program for dietetic students in the province of British Columbia. So we got government approval very last minute. It was expedited right through in October, November, and quickly assembled our admissions portal, working with UBC Graduate Studies, and have so far closed our admissions. We successfully have a lot of applicants, which is really, really great, knowing that we did absolutely no recruiting strategies or anything. So just the program itself sort of trickled across. Applicants all over Canada have applied, the United States, international, specifically China, Nepal. We have individuals from Europe who have applied. So it's really sort of hit the mark. We are admitting only 10 students for the first cohort, which will be for September 2022. So just to remind everyone, the program is meant to help feed that expansion piece. The undergraduate program keeps to course, as you can hear from Kara, nothing's changing except for the big changes. And again, we aren't going to be flooding the system with these master's students. We'll do a reevaluation after the first year. And if we must keep to this 10, that's what we will do. So I just want to reassure the group here that this isn't going to be a massive expansion, and we'll keep you updated as need be with these webinars. So again, we're welcoming 10 students. They will be interviewed by faculty members, given it's a graduate training program. The process is going to mirror our well-oiled machine of undergraduate admissions. So students will be evaluated on all the different facets to make sure that they meet the needs of the program. And we will be seeking candidates who half are international and half are domestic. And this is really at the request of the Ministry of Health to increase that diversity of international applicants. So I think that's it for now. We are working with different individuals. Last comment on the masters, to get the program candidacy to become accredited, but at this time it's not. But we are working towards it, and I'm confident we will get there. Great, thanks, Kara. I'll let, yeah, we have 15 minutes for you to carry on.
Perfect. Great segue to the final slide, which is really just another thank you for being here. We have 15 minutes left, which is a great amount of time for our question and answer period. So at this point, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and we're going to stop the recording, and Tamar is going to facilitate the question and answer period.
Hey everyone, nice to see so many names. I am just going to screen share the questions so that we can see them as we go through them, and I'll be moderating it, and yeah, probably Kara and I will be answering, I would imagine, a majority of the questions. So just give me a moment to screen share.
Just a technical note, whoever on our team started the recording, I think you need to stop it as well.
I have a frozen computer, so I can't do anything. There we go.